Hi everyone, you're watching the Virtual Amicus and I'm Jay Lodha. So today we'll be recording our 84th episode, and this will be the last episode of this year, which is 2021. And so far it has been a phenomenal year for me and my entire team because we could record 84 episodes featuring amazing sessions, and we had so many wonderful PowerPoint presentations, brilliant speakers doing extraordinary sessions for us, and it was always a treat to record such sessions. Now, today's session is really very special because it is on how to build a successful career in gaming and sports laws in India. And just to give you all a brief introduction about our topic, sports law is a relatively new subject. It's a new field, and it's not only an applied law in the field of sports, but it is also a blend of number of jurisdictions. Now, sports law is pretty interesting because it deals with issues such as drug use and abuse, labor issues, tort laws, broadcasting rights, as well as harassment in sports. Now, what is important is to understand the difference between a game of chance or a game of skill, because betting in games is considered to be a game of chance which is strictly prohibited under most gaming enactments, and it also is a state subject under the Constitution of India. So when I say it's a state subject under the Constitution, it means that state has exclusive legislative competence to enact laws with regard to betting or gambling within the states. Now the question here is whether all states prohibit such activities, or is it some state legislation that regulates it, or is it the same that goes with betting or bingo or casinos or lotteries, etc. So basically, what is the difference between a game of skill and a game of chance? So to elaborate further, today we are joined by a lawyer who needs absolutely no introduction in the field of sports law. He's a distinguished attorney, and he specializes in sports, gaming, and entertainment laws. So today we are joined by Mr. Vidushpat Singhania. And just to give you all a brief introduction about our amicus for today's session, he is currently heading Krida Legal and based in Delhi, and he's member election oversight panel of World Athletics, member independent appeals panel World Sailing, co-author law in sports in India, LexisNexis Butterworth Vadva Publishing. He's also facilitated the drafting of National Sports Development Bill 2013, facilitated the drafting of the Preventive of Sporting Fraud Bill in 2013, and facilitated drafting of Anti-Doping Bill in 2018. He has also served as a secretary to Justice Mudgal IPL Probe Committee. He's also a member of Regulatory Commission, Indian Super League, and well, the list is too long, so we had to cut it short. And sir is somebody who needs absolutely no introduction in the field of sports law and practice. So thank you so much, sir, for taking out time from a busy schedule. I know New Year Eve is on its way, so taking out time at such time really means a lot to me and my entire team. Anything that you wish to say before we start with our Q&A segment, sir?
No, I think thank you, Jay, for having me. I think, as you said, you've done 83, 84 sessions. It's good to be the last session for 2021. I would say, it's been a unique year in its progress. So, and I think it's been a unique year for everybody. We've had that dealt with coronavirus, but we've all come out strongly from it. A word to and some remembering the people we've lost in the year, some people, friends, family, as well as colleagues from the profession. I'm sure everybody's had somebody or the other we lost. So just to remember them as well and commiserate the kind of work they've done. Uh, you really touched upon a very, very quick thing. I would say sports and gambling laws are very, very different. Each in its own field is a very specialized field. Personally, in my journey, why I got into sports law and then I got into gambling law. And why I got into gambling law is because I was doing sports law, I was working for the Commonwealth Games, and I was also doing my masters. And while I was writing my thesis paper, I took the topic sports betting. And this is way back in 2008-9 when we didn't have so much poker, rummy, and fantasy sports pre that time. And that time my paper was on sports betting, and that's what I did a lot of study. When you're writing a thesis paper, do a lot of study on it, and then that's where it became really something that I started specializing in. Fortunately, I interacted with a lot of people from the industry, and then I had clients. And in the legal fraternity, what happens is while you learn by reading and writing, you also learn a lot by actually working for your clients, right? Because their issues keep coming up, and then you have to tackle it, and then you read on it, and then you start understanding that, and then the next issue comes up. And I think that's what uh, I learned a lot on the gaming law front as well. I was really fortunate to learn gaming law from one of my colleagues at Squire Sanders when I was in my secondment there. Carl Rossler is again a big gaming lawyer across the world, so he's again taught me a lot. So that's just a bit on the gaming front. On the sports front, I know I'm talking to a fellow GLC colleague of mine on the show. So when I was in GLC, I think I was actually looking for an art law course for my mother at some point of time for some issue, and then I came across a term sports law, and in GLC, and always in my life, I was always interested in sports. Like I played a decent level of cricket. I got cricket colors also in my from London, from Sussex, the school that I played in. I played golf at a competitive level. I played table tennis at state level, as well as university. I was a bronze medalist, Bombay University, for table tennis, and so I always had the interest in sports, right? And when something came across like, oh, there's something known as sports law, I said, way back in second, third year, I said, I think I want to pursue it. Let me read about it, pursue it more. And then I did my so at that time, I'm talking about 3, 4, no IPL, no commercialization in sports. And I said, I wanted to understand there was nobody in India at that point of time. So I did a certificate course in South Africa in sports law. Then I got an internship with TMC Asset Institute at Den Haag the next year. So I went and did an internship with them. And I think then by that time I was hooked and I said, I want to do sports law and continued pursuing it through and through. I also got an opportunity because again something the GLC given is in 2006 or 7 Mr. Wadhwa had come that time Wadhwa Publishing, and he was doing a book on he's got a lot of students from us from GLC to edit and proofread the book on insurance law at that point of time. This is something when I was still in college, fourth year, and that's the time I got to know him. And then eventually I kept meeting him as well in Delhi. And then I told him about sports law, and then he knew Justice Mudgal who wanted to write something on sports law, and then he got us together, and that's how the first book came about, or the concept of the first book came about in 2007, 8. And we started writing it from 8, and it got published in 2010, the first edition. So, that's how my journey in sports law has been. I've been say I can say that I've had the benefit of having very understanding seniors. So the first time I started is I started working with Mr. Senior Advocate, Mr. Dushyant Dave, as I passed out. And he knew about my interest in sports law. And he was kind enough to say, you work, you need to understand litigation, you need to understand how law works. And if you get an opportunity in sports law, please leave. I have no issue with that. But you learn how law works. And therefore, he gave me my first break. And the experience with him, Supreme Court litigation, and understanding how to read a case file, how to actually understand what is it, how to if you are short of time, just read the impugned judgment, read the read what the application is, and then try build on that by reading then the case notes and the file notes, and then those are things that you learn from him, or I learned from him, and then really helped me in the profession. With Justice Mudgal, again, I learned he was that time was a sitting judge. So besides writing the book with him, I would also be a legal researcher for him for judgment. So again, learned how a judge perceives a particular case and how he addresses it and how he approaches it and how he writes his judgment. So again, learned besides the sports law angle, learned a lot on the legal angle on how judges look at various aspects. And then after that, I got to work with the Commonwealth Games in the legal department. All I can say, it was an experience in itself. Uh, lot was not right there, but then that is where the lawyers come in, and you learn. The learning curve was, I would say, very very steep, because a lot of of documentation was on a plate. A lot of it was taking place at the last minute, and so the pressure, handling the internal commercial as well as externally negotiating, because it was happening so much at the end moment. As junior lawyers, we got a lot of time to negotiate, sit through negotiation settlement, actually do it on our own as well, a lot of it. So again a very big learning curve. And then again I got chance to move back with Justice Mudgal by the time he retired, and we did the drafting of the National Sports Code at that point of time, then the National Sports Bill, uh, the inquiry committees on anti-doping that was set up. So various policy work at the sports law front. And then I got to work with Mr. V. Lakshmi Kumaran sir of Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan. So he again taught me a very different approach. So first I learned the senior counsel approach on legal front, then I learned how a judge approaches it, and then I learned from managing partner of a big firm on how he approaches business, how he approaches a particular case, how I'm supposed to address it, how you're supposed to talk to clients, how you're supposed to, those the entire front of the business on the legal front. So again, learned a lot from him. Humble, but he trying to give him credit, he goes down to the depth of every matter, and he gave me time to go down to the depth. He would actually call me and tell me, if you sit with me half an hour every day or at least every week, and then explain to me what it is, and then let's understand how we need to develop and build on this. So no, it was just a big learning curve with him as well. So I can say I've had excellent mentors through and through in this profession, and that's really taught me how to address the sports and the gambling law front. When you talked about the gambling law front, I understand when you talk about the sports game of skill and game of chance. Game of skill is something which was exempted under the erstwhile Public Gambling Act of 1867, which then post our constitution, most states adopted it, and therefore has continued with some slight amendments. Some states don't have it, like Assam and Odisha, but most states had that exception. And based on that, Rummy was classified as a game of skill in 1950s. Then uh, your other games of skill like not including prize competition, but like crosswords were classified as games of skill. And then similarly, horse racing was classified as a game of skill. Even betting on horse racing was classified as a game of skill by the Supreme Court. And that's the jurisprudence on which post technology coming in that has developed with poker, rummy, and fantasy sports now being the unicorns in India, using that exception and offering games of skill services. When you talked about betting and gambling being a state subject, what I've been representing the All India Gaming Federation in the Delhi High Court, in the Madras High Court, and now in the Karnataka High Court. And our argument always has been that betting and gambling in the state subject is betting on gambling and not betting on a game of skill. And therefore, a state cannot legislate on any staking or betting on a game of skill. That has been the principal focus of our arguments, and we succeeded in at least the Tamil Nadu or the Madras High Court, where the legislation was struck down that they could not legislate on banning games of skill for stakes. They could only regulate it, and therefore that matter was sent back to the government. Similarly, the same argument was taken in the Karnataka High Court as well. The judgment has been reserved on the 22nd of this month. So we're hoping by January at some point of time, we will get that judgment as well. So I thought, let me just clarify that quickly because, it leads up to the topic.
Fantastic, sir. So, what an inspirational journey it has been. And coming to our Q&A segment, sir. So, there was a bill that was introduced in the parliament, which was called the Sports Online Gambling and Prevention of Fraud Bill. And it was introduced back in 2018, sir. But subsequently, I don't know, I think the sports bill lapsed because of dissolution of parliament prior to the general elections, and it was never reintroduced. Or was it ever introduced again, sir? Anything that you wish to say to address?
So there were two private member bills that were brought about. I think this is one you're talking about was brought about by the member of parliament, Mr. Shashi Tharoor. So like with private member bills, sometimes they just don't get taken up by the session for discussion. So that's how it lapsed. It never got taken up for discussion. But having said that, the current sports minister also brought the Sports Ethics Commission bill, where while he was not talking about addressing online sports betting, he was definitely talking about addressing issues regarding match manipulation and other ethical issues in sports. So that's something that was also lapsed, but he brought it up. The issue of sports betting was also raised by Member of Parliament, Mr. KTS Tulsi, who is also a senior advocate, that it should be regulated. And the issue of sports betting was also raised in the BCCI judgment in the Cricket Association of Bihar versus BCCI, where Justice Mudgal Committee recommended that sports betting should be regulated. Justice Lodha Committee confirmed that yes, it should be regulated. And then subsequently, the Supreme Court in its judgment also asked the government to consider it. Post that, the Law Commission of India, I think in 2016, took up their mandate and looked at this whole aspect. And in 2018 or 16, I'm just not sure. I'm sorry, I messed up the year. But then they gave a report that sports betting should be regulated. But after that, nothing has happened. So while legally, legislatively, there was some kind of a will. Legislatively, there is no will, so there's no regulation on sports betting. But on the fantasy sport front, Niti Aayog did pick it up last year itself, in 2020 itself, not last year, 2020 now, since we're nearing 2021 end now. And they said that there should be guidelines for fantasy sports at the national level. But again, that again did not go through. In that, and again, we didn't see what the follow-up was. So that's really, in summary, the legislative front. But states really have looked at it. So Sikkim has regulated sports betting. Nagaland has also regulated sports betting in some form or the other, like virtual sports as well as fantasy sports. And just a few days back, Meghalaya has also issued rules for sports betting, that is issuing licenses for sports betting and games of skill and games of chance as well. So yes, now states are looking at regulating this aspect.
So question number two, if you can in simple words explain the difference between game of chance and a game of skill. Is when we talk about game of skill, does it refer to application of mind in that very game, and when we talk about game of chance, does it only mean it is luck driven?
No. So that is one approach which some states in US have taken, that if there is any element of chance in a game, it will be considered as a game of chance. But the Indian judiciary has taken a different approach. This issue has been settled by Supreme Court in Dr. K.R. Lakshmanan as well as the Chamar Bagwala cases, where they have said that in the Indian context, a game of skill is where skill predominates over chance, which means that there is 50% or more skill in that particular game for that game to be classified as a game of skill. How that has to be done will have to be looked at a fact to fact and a case game to game basis. Then when they looked at the game to game basis, they classified rummy as a game of skill. Fantasy sport has been classified as a game of skill. Poker to some extent has been classified as a game of skill by various high courts. So each game has to be looked at. But the test is that the skill has to predominate over chance for a game to be classified as a game of skill.
So coming to our next question, sir, what is the current status of Fantasy 11, sir? Is it regarded as a preponderant skill-based game, or is it a luck-based game?
So good question. With gaming, there is a lot of innovations. So the traditional fantasy sport was really a season-long game which used to be played across. Somebody plays the Premier League fantasy or the NBA fantasy or something. It was a long season long approach. But the innovation in daily fantasy came in much later with the advent of technology. It's not that old. It's about 8-10 years old. And that started with the US and then India adopted it. Now, the fantasy sport, the legality of has been questioned in various high courts. Rajasthan High Court in 2 judgments, the Punjab and Haryana High Court in Varun Gumar judgment, as well as the Bombay High Court in Gurdeep Sachar judgment, have all held that fantasy sports, and in particular, they said at least the Dream 11 format which is offered is a game of skill, and therefore can be offered, and this was outside the ambit of the Gambling Act. On 30th of July this year, this was actually taken up in the Supreme Court as well. And earlier, there were all in limine dismissals where the Supreme Court just dismissed the appeals from various high court. But in this particular order of 30th July, they actually went into a bit more detail and gave an order that yes, fantasy sport is a game of skill. So I would not say it's an absolute judgment, but it's something more than an eliminate dismissal. It is a reasoned dismissal. So I think it is kind of an observation of the Supreme Court. The fantasy sport is a game of skill. So I think to a large extent, the debate has been settled now.
All right, sir. So now, coming to a game, or a game like, let's say, Rummy, or let's say poker, where there's both application of mind, you strategize, you apply your mind, and at the same time, there is a luck plays a very pivotal role. Now, how does one decide what predominates what? Eh, Can it be easily classified in
So
a specific?
fortunately for us, you can go on legal principle and mathematical studies. A lot of mathematical studies are available, which have actually given where that to what extent skill predominates over chance, and they do it by actual seeing the RNGs, doing a study over say 2,000 or 10,000 games, and seeing how a skilled player performs against an amateur player, studying the gameplays amongst many other things to arrive at whether this is a skill game or not. Fortunately for us, Rummy has already been classified as a game of skill by the Supreme Court, so we don't need to look into that further. And similarly, poker has also been classified as a game of skill by the Karnataka High Court, by the Madras High Court, as well as by the West Bengal High Court. So more than I think it has been classified as a game of skill. There's legislative support as well as judicial support on it.
So basically, if a game is classified as a game of skill, so that means it is not prohibited under any statute, predominantly under the Gambling Act, right? It is legal and it can be.
Correct. So it is not. It can be offered. The now what is coming is at this point of time it is prohibited in Karnataka, but the act has been challenged that games of skill for stakes is prohibited. Telangana has prohibited games of skill for stakes. That act is also under challenge, but has not been overturned or stayed yet. Same is with Andhra Pradesh. So it is prohibited on those states. And for states of Sikkim, Meghalaya, and Nagaland, you need a license to offer in the state.
And so, as far as casinos are concerned, talking about Goa, the Union Territory, what is the status? Because we see a lot of casinos functioning there.
So it is now, it's a Goa Daman and Diu Gambling Act has a section 13A which says authorized gaming. And under that, they've made rules where they issued licenses for it. And then the casinos which are operating under the license are allowed to operate. So Goa is very clear, and same is with Sikkim now. They have a proper Sikkim Online Gaming Act and rules under which licenses are issued, and then casinos can function in that state as well.
All right, sir. Now, sir, coming to drug use, talking about performance enhancement drugs that we keep hearing about, which is a major problem which has plagued the sporting sector. We talk about drug testing, or some really which are scheduled banned drugs that are consumed by athletes for performance enhancement, sir. What laws govern these drugs use and misuse, sir?
So there's no law as such, but what it is governed by is something like a sports rules and regulation. So the World Anti-Doping Agency is the foremost body for anti-doping purposes for sports. They come out with a code and they come out with a prohibited list every year based on scientific research and development. And then that gets implemented because then they are a signatory, or their code is UN is a signatory to their code, as well as the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, imbibes and incorporates that within the rules and regulation. And once IOC incorporated, it becomes a part of the entire sporting ecosystem. So then all sports have to then abide by it. And that's the reason how it is implemented across sports.
So, sir, if an athlete is found guilty of this and there's an order to that effect that terminates him, or suspends him from participating in any of the tournaments, is there an appellate authority where he can appeal or challenge it?
So when you say guilty, I think we say an adverse analytical finding is found. So when an athlete sample is tested, and I'm guessing you are more concerned with where a substance is found in the urine or the blood of the particular athlete. You're not in the prohibited process front. So when athlete's urine say test is tested and there's an adverse analytical finding, then a notice is sent to the athlete upfront where he's given time to respond to it. Once he responds to it, then is decided whether a panel should be constituted to hear the matter of the athlete or not. Say, suppose an athlete accepts the punishment and no panel needs to be constituted. Or for that matter, if he gives an explanation and the anti-doping agency accepts the explanation, and they propose a punishment to actually accept, and no panel needs to be constituted. It's taken as agreed sanction. But if in case there is a dichotomy there, then a panel is constituted, which then hears the entire matter. Now, if it is a national level athlete, then the matter is heard at in India. The National Anti-Doping Agency, or NADA, has a disciplinary panel and an appeals panel. Uh, if it is a testing which is taking place, say, during an international event, say like the Commonwealth Games or the Olympic Games, then the CAS sets up an ad hoc committee at that point of time, which then hears that particular matter. So that's where the jurisdiction goes. So it depends on where the test is taking place and what is the level of the athlete. Depending on that, it is determined where that particular dispute or where the adverse analytical finding issue will go to.
So now, moving forward to our next question, talking about harassment in sports, so if an athlete is a victim of, let's say, any kind of discrimination, it could be racial discrimination, or so, is there an internal investigation that takes place? Who orders this inquiry? Let's say in cricket, or let's say in football.
So harassment can be multifloor, right, Jay? So
Yes.
harassment can be multifloor. Harassment and most community setup, so you can make a complaint there. You can go to the district court for that particular issue. When you talk about harassment in the sense of discrimination in selection policy, then essentially there is the internal dispute resolution mechanism in most state federations. So mostly it is raised there. Raised there. In case they don't address it, then mostly the athletes go to in writ jurisdiction to the High Court. Is the avenue available? They get it addressed there. Otherwise, it's a writ jurisdiction High Court.
All right, sir. And talking about broadcasting rights in sports law, how does a channel earn these rights to broadcast any particular event or show or tournament? Is it governed by the competition law in India?
Eventually, all that transaction or whether they're in dominant position or not will be governed by competition law in its completely separate arrangement, right? But yes, you're correct to say that how a broadcast right is acquired depends on the strength of the particular sport. So, like BCCI can do tenders, and there will be multiple people bidding for that tender because cricket is that nature. But say, suppose you are looking at broadcasting, say, a sport like Kho, or for that matter, say table tennis or something, then literally a lot of times you have to pay the broadcaster to actually produce that feed, and then you yourself have to sell it. Then the arrangement is a bit different. So it really depends on the sport. Cricket, yes, you have to do a tender process. It is a big $1 billion contracts that come in. But for a smaller sport, literally sometimes you have to pay the particular broadcaster. And this is the old, and this is also changed recently. Earlier, DD always used to charge a league or a sport to broadcast. So they would actually charge you to make the feed, and then they actually would say, when the revenue comes, we'll give you a rev share. But then Mr. Jagmohan Dalmia changed that entire dynamics for cricket. And then slowly we've seen some change coming in for badminton as well, for kabaddi as well, because Star is now actually a part owner of the kabaddi league as well. So, we see a bit of change coming in, but it depends on sport to sport and the strength of the sport, whether there's a tender process or whether it's state acquisition that they just say, let people come in and whoever they get the best deal with, they negotiate, or it is something where you actually have to pay the broadcaster to produce a feed. It just depends on the strength of the sport.
Very well, sir. So I think we've covered more or less all the aspects that germinate from sports law and gaming laws. So now, what would be your piece of advice to all the young lawyers or law students who are watching, who wish to build a successful career like you have in the field of sports or gaming laws in India?
I'm also a struggling lawyer, right? We are young lawyers, we're all struggling. So one, I think, is read a lot. If you're interested in something, just by saying that you have a passion does not take you through or get you an opportunity. Read. Once you read, you will be more aware, and you will be also more aware of what the opportunities and where the opportunities are. So I think that's the first thing. Second is, while if you are not getting an immediate opportunity in sports or gaming law, take an opportunity with a litigation chamber or with a law firm and gain a general knowledge on law or the legal front. That will always help you when you get an opportunity to specialize. Because the principles of law are the same in sports, gaming, or any other law. Is then you it's applied law, then it becomes when you start applying it specifically to the sport industry and start gaining more knowledge of that industry. So just get a big knowledge of law. And third, which I keep telling all young lawyers, is just because you studied law does not mean that you have to be a lawyer. Sometimes, if you think the sports is your calling, you can go into sports management. I know a lot of brilliant lawyers who started with sports law and then they've gone to sports management and they're brilliant administrators in the sports front. So, there are a lot of opportunities available on that front as well.
And so, any literature or any particular book that you would recommend, or any chamber that you would suggest, or any internships that young lawyers can possibly look at, or the options or law students can explore?
So we can read our book, Justin Mudgal and my book, Law and Sports in India, though it's now a 2016 edition, but it's a decent, I think, a start. There are good portals like Law and Sports, which give good global or international sports legal knowledge. On the gambling front, that there are two or three big societies in India. There's the All India Gaming Federation, there is the FIFS, and then there is the TORF, which is now being rebranded again as Electronic Gaming Federation. These are all opportunities available in the gaming front. On the sports front, you can also work with the national federations. You can work with Sports Authority of India. Multiple opportunities available. It may not be so much commercial, but maybe in-house. Again, on the event management side, you will have opportunity at the Indian Super League, the IPL, the various teams, amongst things. So opportunities are galore. You just have to explore it and pursue it diligently. You'll get this. Chamber wise, I think sports law, I think we are Equity Legal have a decent sports law practice. Law NK has a good sports law practice. Game Changer has a decent sports law practice. I think you can look at any of those chambers as well, or firms as well for sports legal knowledge.
Well, thank you so much there, sir. And since you've already mentioned about your mentor in the field of sports and gaming law, so we will not touch upon that. And lastly, sir, future of sports law. Anything that you wish to say, comment, or
I hope COVID does not come again. Sports law really takes a backseat where we are more dealing with disputes rather than actually helping more leagues and more sports grow with the COVID. So that's, I think, the first thing. But as I said, that we're changing the entire dynamics in sports is changing, right? Earlier, it used to be all amateur sports. Now, sports is becoming proper professional activity. Is becoming activity where athletes or sports person are able to earn, where broadcaster is able to earn, where a federation is able to earn. So it is almost becoming an industry. And with any industry or burgeoning industry or a growing industry, a lot of opportunities come, be it on the broadcasting side or the event management side or the athlete representation side or dispute resolution side, amongst things. And as an opportunity comes, we lawyers find our way somewhere or the other. There's always a need of a lawyer everywhere. So a lot of opportunities in this sector.
well, so a big thank you that you took out time and for this stellar presentation. I'm sure this will immensely benefit all the viewers who are watching. And to all the viewers, our email is mentioned on the channel. Feel free to write to us in case of any queries that you have, and we'll be more than happy to forward the same to our amicus for today's session. Sir, anything that you wish to say, sir, before we wrap this segment?
Thank you so much, and wishing everybody a happy new year and hopefully a COVID-free 2020.
Well, see you all in 2022 now. And as we
2022,
finish
sorry, yeah.
absolutely.
Sorry, 2022, yeah.
Yeah, even I'm very bad with dates. So see you all in 2022. Wish you all a very happy new year in advance. Stay home, stay safe. There is a new variant in town. Subscribe to the virtual amicus. I'm sure this will keep you busy for the rest of the year as well. And it would not have been, this journey would not have been possible without the love and support that I got from so many speakers, so many subscribers, to all the viewers. A big thank you from me and my entire team at the Virtual Amicus. Thank you so much, sir, for making this episode number 84 really very special to us. The Virtual Amicus started with a bang. Now it ends the 2021 with a big bang, as I can proudly say. And in case of any queries, you can directly approach us, or you can write to our amicus for today's session. See you all in 2022. Take care, stay home, stay safe. It's goodbye for now. Pleasure speaking to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.